Welcome. My name is Dr. Darlene Shelton, Program Director for the Global Peace Education Network. As a multicultural psychologist, I've learned that most people have good hearts and good intentions, no matter what background they come from. There are 8 billion people in the world today, and if you asked, I think most of them would tell you they want to live in peace. So if that's true, why don't we have peace? Maybe there's a simple answer. Maybe most of us don't know how. Maybe we were never taught the basic skills for being in peace with ourselves, each other, and the planet we call home. Well, here's some good news. Around the world, many people like you and me are working together in peace education to learn practical ways to live at peace, personally, with family and friends, in communities, within governments and institutions, and with the earth itself. Last year, many of us, peace educators, policymakers, civic leaders, activists, artists, and others assembled at the Immigration History Museum in Paris for the first Global Summit for Peace Education. Today, we invite you to join in and share some of the highlights of that historic gathering and hear from some who participated. We've organized these highlights into these 5 sections. Take peace to heart, going far together, securing life, arcing towards justice, and celebrating peace. In a time rife with events that can seem very discouraging, we hope you're inspired by our conference theme. Take heart, prepare for peace.
We've already begun our global mobilization in peace education just by the act of coming here today. And thank you again for that. By embracing the unexpected to combine what we know about living in peace. Together, we'll begin today and tomorrow to learn about the answers on 3 important questions, very important questions about peace education. The first one is what's working now? The second one is how do we expand the reach and the impact? And the third one is what can we do in the next 30 days to get started? All right, let's get started with this message from the Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres.
Dear friends, this Global Summit for Peace Education highlights a fundamental lesson. Education is critical to peace. The tools being discussed at this important gathering, peace building, human rights, negotiation, and conflict resolution skills and training, are essential to equipping the next generation of peace leaders. And we need peace leaders more than ever. From the Middle East to Ukraine, Sudan, Myanmar, and more, our world is being upended by conflict. The recently adopted Pact for the Future offers a roadmap to strengthen international cooperation and intensify efforts to address the root causes of conflicts and forge peace. And this includes working to ensure that all learners can access knowledge, skills, and information so they can become positive agents of change in their communities. And it includes a commitment to explore additional ways for young people to contribute to peace processes and conflict resolution. I urge you to use the Pact as a resource for greater action. Thank you for being part of this essential effort to build the next generation of peace leaders our world needs.
All right, let's hear from an individual who helped change the face of the United Nations, from more men to more women. I'm obviously talking about the former UN Under-Secretary General and High Representative Ambassador Anwarul Chowdhury.
Greetings to you, Madam Chair, and all the participants from a cold and cloudy New York, the city that hosts the headquarters of the world's most universal multilateral organization, the United Nations. Just now, we heard the encouraging message of our Secretary General Antonio Guterres, wishing the Global Summit on Peace Education all success. On behalf of the Advisory Council of the Global Peace Education Network, GPEN, the organizer of this forward-looking gathering and supported by its partners, I convey our deepest gratitude to the Secretary General of the United Nations for his important message. I had the honor of presenting the keynote addresses at the first two Peace Education Day conferences in 2001, 2021, and 2022. The goal of these conferences has been to assemble a global network of peace educators and establish a United Nations Peace Education Day. Today's Global Summit for Peace Education is an extraordinary gathering of multidisciplinary practitioners and leaders who recognize that to build a peaceful and sustainable planet, human beings must approach peace with the same intentionality as every other positive human endeavor. The urgency of education for peace cannot be overemphasized. The quest for peace is the longest ongoing human endeavor, but it runs alongside many of the things that we do on a daily basis. Peace is an integral part of human existence. In everything we do, in everything we say, and in every thought we have, there is a place for peace. We should not isolate peace as something separate or distant. This realization has now become more pertinent amid the ever-increasing militarization, and weaponization that is destroying both our planet and our people. In my introduction to the 2008 publication titled Peace Education, A Pathway to the Culture of Peace, I wrote that, as Maria Montessori had articulated so appropriately, those who want a violent way of living prepare their young people for that. But those who want peace have neglected their young, and that way are unable to organize them for peace. However, the last decades of violence and human insecurity have led to a growing realization in the world of education today that children and young people should be educated in the ways of peaceful living. The task of educating children and young people to find non-aggressive means to relate to one another is of primary importance. Peace education needs to be accepted in all parts of the world, in all societies and countries, as an essential element in creating the culture of peace. To meet effectively the challenges posed by the present complexity of our time, the young of today deserves a radically different education, one that does not glorify war, but educates for peace, nonviolence, and global cooperation. Transformational peace education should become an essential part of our educational processes like reading and writing. In addition to expanding the capacity of the students to understand the issues, peace education should aim particularly at empowering the students suited to their individual levels to become agents of peace and nonviolence. Peace education is more effective and meaningful when it is globally relevant. In, Indeed, such educating for peace should be more appropriately called education for global citizenship. Such learning cannot be achieved without well intentioned, sustained, and systematic peace education that leads the way to the culture of peace. Let me conclude by emphasizing that the role of education should be to encourage the young people to be themselves, to build their own character and their personality. Peace education needs to be transformative, forward looking, adaptive, comprehensive, and of course, empowering. Let us resolve at this global summit to campaign for the proclamation by the United Nations of a Global Peace Education Day, to transform the role of education in embracing the culture of peace and global citizenship, as emphasized by the United Nations, for the good of humanity, for the sustainability of our planet, and for making our world a better place to live. Thank you.
We're not going to be able to plan for a global mobilization for peace education uh, all at once today and tomorrow. But many of you probably have heard this Margaret Mead quote that says, "Never doubt that 30 committed people can change the world." And I think there's more than 30 of us here. So if you wanted to do peace education, a prerequisite is being alive and then being safe. So this is the human security area, and we're about to hear from some proponents of human security. So, okay, let's say we're living in an ideal world, and now we're safe, we're alive, we have a sense of well-being. What happens next? And this takes us to another session. What happens next is we want to be able to participate fully with dignity in our community, wherever that community is, right? We want to be full partners. And so, human rights and justice. We want to have the same rights as every other human being, and we want it to be fair. So that's another session that's coming up, and that's one of the big teams. So now we're secure, and now we're participating in our community with dignity. Then what? Well, then we all want to be able to earn a living. We want to be able to sustain ourselves. We want to be able to produce the things that our communities need to live and thrive and survive. And so that takes us to sustainability and prosperity. We want both, but we want to be responsible for the planet we all call home. We want to take care of it. It's our home. So that takes us to the next session. Now, everything we've talked about so far are sort of prerequisites. But they finally take us to, we talk about the culture of peace, but we're not living in the culture of peace right now. So we want to think about what and feel what we just experienced was a feeling. It wasn't a thinking, right? It was a feeling of what is it like to live in the culture of peace. So that is one of the sessions that we have. And the idea of this conference is in each of these sections, we answer these three questions. And then we leave here with more of an architecture of what will it take, at least for those of us in this room and those of us online in this room, in this virtual room, and those of us whom we represent and associate with when we go home. What will it take for us to start to collaborate and move peace education higher on the global agenda so that it's not just something that gets kicked down the road because something else is more important. Other things feel more important. Hungry people, armed conflict, human displacement. These are problems that do need immediate attention, but they shouldn't become excuses for not addressing the root causes of what's happening in the world.
I'm very happy today to be joined by Mabinge Ngom, the GPEN Global Ambassador, and I would like to welcome you. Tell me a little bit about your background. You have many years of experience.
Thank you. I am an economist, and I was very fortunate to be born in West Africa, where I grew up, where I studied, before joining the civil servant in Senegal. And then I embarked in further studies in the US after scholarship in Glasgow, in UK. And then I returned as advisor in the Ministry of Economy and Finance on Senegal before starting an international career. That gave me the opportunity to work with top international organizations, such as the International Planned Parenthood, the Global Fund to fight HIV, TB, and malaria. And I was fortunate to be part of the small team that started the Global Fund in the early 2000s before moving to New York and to be the first ever director of United Nations Population Fund program. I thereafter moved to Dakar as regional director for West and Central Africa, where I spent about 7 years. And then I moved to Addis Ababa to lead the UNFPA engagement in Africa, supporting the African Union, especially pushing the establishment of the so needed African Union Humanitarian Agency. That's really a summary of the journey I went through since I left school in 1983.
You were a co-chair of the steering committee for the Paris Peace Education Summit. Can you talk to us about how you designed the summit structure?
Well, I would start by saying that we started the process in 2024. That was a very special year. We were still in the midst of the consequences of the COVID-19, but we were also struggling with some tension in Ukraine, tension in Gaza, but also tension in the Horn of Africa, and same tension in the Sahel and the Great Lake region in Africa, like in many other places around the world. That was the context in which we thought that it was important for the Global Peace Education Network to take this bright initiative to call a summit on peace education with a goal of accelerating peace everywhere around the world. As such, we thought that we cannot do it without bringing together all key global actors involved in a way or another in building peace around the world, especially those that have a wealth of experience delivering peace education around the world or supporting peace education at grassroots level. And the other aspect of the design of the Paris Summit was not only about bringing global leaders and bringing grassroots organization, it was also about bringing high-profile people, influencers, people who have voice, people who can put the resources we need to advance peace education everywhere around the world. But also we brought the academics, we brought young people. I think it was the very important aspect of the design of the Peace Education Summit. And in fact, in every single session, we had a combination of this diversity of actors who sat together, share experiences, good and less good, and most importantly, had an open, constructive, and forward-looking conversation around how we can remove the roadblocks so we can move to scale. This was part of the design of the summit, and I want to thank Secretary General of the United Nations and other high-profile people who spoke at the opening ceremony, but also all the people who come from around the world, who come and bring their contribution, be part of the conversation, and be part of what can be seen as a moonshot initiative. Because it was ambitious, it had an impact on every life, and I think it was a very strong beginning for building what we have called in Paris a global partnership for peace that is present everywhere around the world.
Well, the summit would not have been a success without you. So you have such a broad understanding of geopolitics and the role of peace education in making a change on the planet. Can you tell us what do you think are the next steps that are needed in order to have peace education throughout the world to bring about a culture of peace?
Thank you. I think among the next step following the Paris Peace Education Summit, that was really ambitious and essential for sustaining. I'm thinking about establishing a peace education day, observed everywhere around the world, to raise, celebrate the impact of peace education globally. Additionally, we need to set up what we have called in Paris a Global Secretariat for Peace Education, which serves as a central hub, coordination, and support for grassroots institutions, grassroots organizations around the world. We also plan to organize an annual peace education summit to continue the dialogue we started in Paris, to track progress on our initiative. We also aim a regional chapter enabling localized effort that align with global goals while addressing specific community needs. So we should not forget our dream to have a global peace education actor in every single household around the world. Then our moonshot ambition will become a reality. I believe that through these steps, it can help build a robust framework for addressing peace education and fostering a lasting partnership across diverse communities. So I believe that with the Paris Summit, I think we have made a major move toward a culture of peace around the world.
Well, thank you so much. You give us a lot of hope. And you're such a brilliant and experienced man. GPEN is very privileged to have you working with us. Thank you so much for joining me today.
And let me introduce you to the next participants. The chair of this session will be Hélène Mercely. Can we please welcome her?
Merci. I'm going to speak in English. I think my messages are in English. So UNICEF places a strong focus on addressing long-term structural exclusion and inequality through our normative children's rights agenda, humanitarian assistance mandate, and long-term development approaches. So this work spans global advocacy, national legislation, community engagement, localization, and institutional strengthening and individual support. So I would like to share 3 core messages on best practices. So the first one is inclusive and equitable education systems build inclusive and peaceful societies. Indeed, intentionally designing the education system with inclusion in mind in curricula, physical layouts, teachers, training, and resources allocation is a powerful strategy that will directly contribute to the larger goal of successful coexistence. The second message I would like to share is peace is a culture that needs to be built in and around schools, but also goes beyond schools. As we know, education and learning are not only in schools, but also within communities and in different learning spaces. So we have some UNICEF-supported successful peace education programs that focus on action to promote peace, peaceful coexistence in schools and their communities in Central African Republic, in Western Central African region, in Colombia, in Democratic Republic of Congo. For example, we have trained teachers in psychosocial support and peace education, aim to equip educators with the tools to foster social cohesion among children affected by conflict and provide a nurturing and protective learning environment. And the last message is children are agents of change. Children's voice need to be heard to build a truly peaceful future. And UNICEF advocates for the meaningful participation of young people within their communities, empowering them to become active agents for change that can contribute to better peace for the next generation.
2 individuals who were very, very close to me were also my mentors. The late Professor Boutros Boutros-Ghali, and when he was the United Nations Secretary General, I was his advisor from 1992 to 1996, and Professor Federico Mayor Zaragoza when he was Director General of UNESCO. Now, the culture of peace takes me back to the Yamoussoukro Declaration in Abidjan in 1988. That's really where it all began. It was a concept, but a concept that posed difficulties. When it came to defining what a culture of peace meant, as a financier to invest in this area during the time of Professor Boutros Boutros-Ghali, he had developed 3 agendas: peace, development, and democracy. In fact, the driving force behind these 3 agendas is education. We will not have peace without education. We will not have development without education. We will not have democracy without education. And later, when we returned to Paris, the same problem arose with regard to the issue of peace in education. We asked ourselves the question. We tried to do something for very specific circumstances. We wanted to develop the Culture of Peace program, this time not to educate children in school, but police officers. We did it in Argentina. And when we discussed it with the Argentine Minister of the Interior, he said, but you know, that could be very difficult. But we started out simple and we ended with the culture of peace. That way you build understanding. And we started by asking the police officer, what is your job? Now in France, we say peace officer, even peacekeeper. Although honestly, we don't know much about peacekeeping. That's the country where I live. So police officers have this feeling that they represent power, not the citizen. And when I see a female police officer arresting a young man, I often ask her, ma'am, are you a mother? Are you treating that young man like your own child, like your own kid? Try to educate him. You arrest him for drug problems or whatever, but your role is really not to report him and take him to the police station to spend 24 hours and the next day to present him to the prosecutor. You're going to aggravate the prosecutor because there's no reason for that young person to be there for this kind of problem. This is the question of the culture of peace. As complex as it is, it's also simple. To borrow Professor Federico Maior's terminology, which was also included in the UNESCO Charter, we need to open people's minds to peace. We need people to act in accordance with this culture of peace. It must be part of our daily lives. I don't want to get too mixed up on the subject, but I would like to come to the main point, which is that often, when I talk with my colleagues, the root of the problem is always money. But we can't make peace with the devil either. We can't do anything just because they're going to give us money, because money often comes with conditions attached, with strings. I've traveled all over Africa. I've traveled throughout Latin America. I've discussed it. I've met with hundreds of heads of state around the world. And when you want to do something like this, then there's no money. There's no money. So the ideal, in fact, is awareness. I know that NGOs are working at the community level, but in order to develop the true culture of peace, well, right now we're working on very sensitive cases of human rights violations in Sierra Leone. And I receive photos that are unfortunately unpleasant to look at, and violence has become a part of everyday life. And violence there seems like the only solution to problems. So funding for this issue really needs to be provided. We need to be creative. Most foundations knock on the same door. If you're in France, you knock on the door of BNP, all the people who have money. But in fact, that's not the funding model for a foundation in the future. We need to reinvent. We need to create. I often say that we're in the process of creating a university in Egypt, and my colleagues say, yes, you know, the answer is tuition fees. I tell them, listen, tuition fees are not going to ensure the university's sustainability. The reason's very simple. Now, I was educated in the United States, and the majority of universities in the U.S. are private universities. They don't live off tuition fees. They have what are called endowments, which bring in a lot of money. You're not going to pay the salary of an American professor at Harvard or the rector with tuition fees. Tuition fees are used up in a matter of weeks by universities. So if you want to create peace education courses, you want to create and develop the culture of peace, you need to know how to create a mechanism that is autonomous within the university to ensure its sustainability and maintain the interest of students so that they can move in that direction. So, okay, I'm just finishing up. I'm saying, for example, for the university, we can very simply design a university that comes with a university hospital, which is a significant source of money. So for the rich, they have to pay, and the poor receive free care. That's the model. Now, this was done by one of the great medical professors of our time, Professor Barbier of Lebanon. Now, he was on an official visit to Jordan.
Je vous en prie, je vous laisse terminer, mais on va passer aux prochaines questions. Je vous en prie, non, terminez, terminez.
Donc, je dis par
May his
exemple,
soul rest in peace. And there was a plot to assassinate him. And he said, if I get out alive, I want to create a free hospital for the poor in Beirut. At the time, Beirut was an extremely important city, and we're going to charge the money for the hospital to the people in the Middle East who have the money. And that hospital worked very, very well, the Barbier Hospital. Now, this was in 1947, and the hospital continued working very well for decades. Didn't receive any public funds. It received absolutely nothing. It survived on the expertise of its doctors. And so, a university with a hospital center could have the luxury of being able to finance such programs. Then we need to develop other innovative strategies that will allow us to have autonomous programs.
L'hôpital fonctionne très bien. Il ne reçoit pas de fonds publics, il ne reçoit absolument rien. Il vit de son expertise, de ses médecins. Et donc, une université qui est dotée d'un centre hospitalier pourrait avoir le luxe de pouvoir financer des programmes pareils. Ensuite, il faut développer d'autres stratégies innovatives nous permettant d'avoir des programmes autonomes.
I would like, Kekashan, if you hear us and if you're still with us, to have your point of view on that. How do we, now that we know what we have to do, what are the next steps, and what can we do in the next 30 days to expand the reach and the impact of that culture of peace in education?
I wanted to take the opportunity to share some concrete ground level solutions that are being undertaken, because I feel like a lot of the time when we're talking about peace education, we forget about the implementation aspect of it. And as founder president of Green Hope Foundation, which works in 28 countries globally on all aspects of sustainability with a very particular focus on peace and promoting peace education using creative modes of communication like music, art, dance, drama, sports to put itself forward in campaigns such as our We Want Books, Not Nukes campaign, to ensure that young people are aware about the importance of knowing about peace and how to put that peace into action. But the reason I wanted to share these examples was because, as I mentioned, very often we see and talk about peace education, but the implementation does vary and it needs to be localized in order to truly meet the needs and wants of those particular communities that we work with. So one instance of peace education where we hadn't thought about it before, but we realized that it's very, very evident, was in the solar computer labs of STEM and STEAM education, providing it to underserved communities within Liberia, within the Sundarbans, and within Western India, to reach out to children who've traditionally been left out and marginalized as a result of pre-existing inequalities, and bringing them into the fold, teaching them ways of being able to give back, to use innovation as a way to support their community, is a form of peace education. And we're utilizing that and providing them with these skill sets to be able to think and act for a more peaceful and sustainable future. We see how installing solar streetlights in climate disaster zones in Bangladesh, in Liberia, in Cambodia, provides safe spaces for women and girls to come out of their homes in the evenings. And we teach the children at the schools we work with here about why we're installing this, because we see that for them, it's not just about, oh, we need to help others and we need to be at peace with ourselves. It's also about how can we create peaceful societies around us. And they're the ones leading the way in terms of creating that positive change turning their peace education into ground level action. And so these are some of the ground level solutions as a result of peace education. And we feel, and working on the ground, we feel that that is kind of what is being done right now. There is a lot that is being done, but we need to focus more on the implementation aspect. And that is exactly some of the solutions that I shared here with you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for this introduction. Hélène?
Merci. 30 days, that's quite short, actually.
I know.
But at UNICEF, we have already started, actually. So we have our strategic plan that puts a strong focus on promoting equitable and inclusive education systems and elevates peace building as a cross-cutting priority. So UNICEF is engaged in the design of its new strategic plan that we have started thinking about and designing, and peace building will continue to be a strong focus moving forward. And in addition, UNICEF has also taken action to strengthen and streamline the implementation of the peace building agenda. We have developed recently a global framework for peace building, which builds on a decade of work in peace building education, aiming for systematic and international implementation beyond a specific project or personalities.
Thank you very much. Very complete.
Well, I do not really have any short-term approach, but I can tell you something very important. From the International Human Rights Council, and we are really focusing on also on peace education as a human right, that people must understand that they should contribute into this process. Most of the work is done at the voluntary level for the moment. Any short solution has to be voluntary. I mean, unless you are an institution and you have your own means that you are investing, you cannot seek any support on a short term. It's just right. Mission impossible. But on a pragmatic way, you have, as I said, you have to develop some kind of innovative funding for a humanitarian project. And there is funds available for that. You have just to seek them. And then, because they're not expecting you to make any money with this program. So therefore, you have to have some high yield project that allow you to fund as a derivative the peace culture program. There's nobody going to fund you. As I said, I will give you a very simple example. Maybe you might know it, maybe you don't. When a private person, let's say, make a donation and he's going to build a mosque, the first question he's asked, how are you going to maintain the mosque? You build the mosque, it's beautiful. You spend $20 million. Now, this mosque, if you don't have some kind of revenue coming in to maintain it, it will be destroyed. Maybe longevity, 5 years, 10 years. No, yeah. The famous Hassan II mosque in Morocco, in Casablanca, that is an incredible art piece. But the government is providing the money to maintain such a mosque. You cannot. So peace program as a humanitarian endeavor, okay, it is not a profitable business. So therefore, you must have in parallel a project that will sustain these programs, and it is possible. I am working on this. I have my colleague here, Stefano Cobaton. We are working on projects that they don't bring us money, but we make money differently that allow us to fund those projects that no bank will touch, including the World Bank, including the African Development Bank.
Before we take a short break, everyone, would you have one last thing to share on the subject of investing in peace education to transform the world? Sorry. Just in a short... Maybe you don't. Maybe you've said everything you wanted to say, but if you want to share something more, then that's the time to do so. Hélène, on est bon? Il n'y a aucune obligation. Hein.
I just give an example of, sorry, looking at my notes.
No worries. We all do.
So yeah, I mean, how to invest? Yeah, we need to continue our efforts, of course, for education and for all children and in all contexts. So we know that countries with higher learning and years of quality schooling experience fewer conflicts, right? And an increase in safety and security. So education is the best long-term investment for building peaceful and sustainable societies. Countries that have very high peace levels have an average secondary school completion rate of 99%. And while for very low peace countries, the average rate is only 52%. So education outcomes that are associated with better equitable distribution of resources, acceptance of the right of others, free flow of information, and well-functioning government and good relations with neighbors. So briefly, this is what I wanted to share.
Thank you very much. Thank you. One last word.
Yes, yes. Well, I will not speak about Africa or Latin America. I will speak about Europe.
Yeah.
Professor Federico Mayor used to say, la force de l'Europe, ce n'est pas l'Europe de la force. Aujourd'hui, on doit prêcher ici peace education and peace of culture au président Macron, au chancelier allemand, et j'en passe. Donc, je pense, si la force de l'Europe, c'est l'Europe des valeurs, la culture de la paix est un élément fondamental. Si on veut créer la paix entre l'Ukraine et la Russie, je pense que le message de l'ancien Premier ministre Dominique de Villepin est très pertinent. Il est attaqué par tout le monde. D'accord?
Could you share it in English potentially?
Yes, of course.
I think that would be very
I'm
interesting.
saying it's very important. I just mentioned the former Director General of UNESCO, Professor Federico Mayor, used to say that the force of Europe, it's not Europe of the force, not Europe military. It's the Europe of values.
That's interesting, sorry, because what strategy will the declaration, for example, put in place?
Well, let's put this way, like what our colleague, the United Nations Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, and that one of the most important steps forward to this pre-summit event, the most important is to make sure that we will get approved the Global Peace Education Day at the United Nations.
Right.
I think we have to lobby for that. That recognition will be a milestone for all of us who are advocates of peace, culture of peace, human rights, children's rights, etc., etc. It's very important. That will give us a world credibility and presence that it's a win. We will score a big point if we can, before the end of 24. That will be really great. We have to do everything. We might not be able with the next United Nations Secretary General. We don't know. Things can change. But I think Antonio Guterres, he's for it. And that he's ready mentally to go for it. And we have to take the momentum seriously and make sure that we can have the recognition of the Global Peace Education Day. It's very important.
Thank you very much. Do we have another question?
Yes, I have a question. Hello, everyone. I would like first to thank the organizers, the stakeholders for having us today in this historical place, and also our honorable speakers. My name is Jihan El Riyati, and I am an ICESCO Youth Peace Ambassador from Morocco. And my question is the following. Do you think that investing in AI to empower youth in peace education would promote positive peace? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would Hélène or Kikishan like to answer the question? Hélène, maybe? All right.
So the question was if investing in AI can contribute to peace education.
Exactly, yes.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think AI now it's part of the new our new society, I would say, and investing in education, as we all mentioned in this panel is very important. So I think AI can bring some new tools. Of course, I mean, it has some conditions and a frame that we need to work on, maybe, but I think, yeah, it can expand how we can reach more children and how we can also invest in peace education in a good way.
Thank you very much. That's a very interesting topic. Kekashan, would you have something to say about it and the impact
Sure.
that AI has?
Sure. I feel like, yes, I agree with Ellen that on the expansion and getting access to peace education and ensuring we're able to at least have the infrastructure available, we can definitely utilize AI in that sense to be able to put forward that reach. But I would be very cautious in investing in AI to kind of move forward in imparting the actual content, because peace education and peace in general is something that's very, very human, and it requires us to take into account that humanity, and leaving that and taking away that human aspect would, I feel, be the wrong way to go. So while AI can definitely help with access to infrastructure and getting it out there and access, the content and the actual like imparting of the education and peace education should definitely still be left to the human beings, and ensuring that we invest in people and getting their voices out there and making sure it actually reaches those who are most vulnerable.
Hello, Dominic Steyler. I hold a UNESCO chair entitled Horticulture of Economic Peace. And I'm surprised because since this morning, the issue of economics has not been introduced in the elements. Earlier, when we were talking about diplomacy, we mentioned sports diplomacy, artistic diplomacy, political diplomacy, but the economic issue was not included. We created this chair on a culture of economic peace for a fairly simple reason, which is to say that the current economic model, which is totally hegemonic and drives almost everything that happens on this planet, has now become destructive. And we cannot do without economics. The question is therefore, how can we reintroduce a culture of peace into the economy? That is to say, completely change the paradigm. Because today, all the people who are being trained to become future leaders and communicators are being trained in destruction, are being trained in the end, if you ask. I work in a business school. If you ask a student what the purpose of a company is, their answer is to make money. It's not to contribute to social life, which for me is the next step. And for me, it's a real question. If you create a university in Egypt, because the reason we created this research chair is very clearly to be able to say that we need to transform the way we train our future leaders if we want, at some point, the culture of peace we're talking about here to be a chance to move forward. Because here, we're also driven by the economic question. If we don't have this economic issue, it won't work. So my question is, how do we get an ambassador for the culture of economic peace? How do we avoid confusing economic peace with the economics of peace? The economics of peace is for those who are already thinking about making money from what will happen next in Gaza or Ukraine. Economic peace is about how we educate children, students, and leaders upstream to understand that the goal of the economy is solidarity. Thank you very much. I won't repeat your question, but your analysis is very relevant, and I completely agree with it. Let's talk about economic deployment. You know, I was among the people who created Economists for Peace and Security with Joseph Stiglitz, Edward Nell, James Galbraith, and others. And there's a certain awareness at this level of the importance of rethinking the economy in the context of peace, because we had, in fact, developed a war economy. We never developed a peace economy. They're very closely linked. It's fundamental. It's very important. I'm very happy that you mentioned the example of business schools. I have a sense of companies that are producing shoes. So the founder of Nike thought that through more sales, we could guarantee sustainability. We simply need to develop marketing, develop strategic management, do some planning, and we will really remain competitive and provide solutions for the future. Well, the new generation of sons says, no, 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 it doesn't work like that. The Italians are going to kill us. They're very strong in the field of running. We're not going to be able to. And there are also other emerging countries. So we need to rethink finding a new source, what I call, or what a very great American theorist, a colleague of mine, Professor Edward Nell, calls transformational growth. Transformational growth. Applying this to management is obvious today. You can ask any CEO in the United States, whether it's the CEO of IBM or the CEO of General Electric. If you ask them whether the company's success lies in sales growth, the answer would be no. Why? Because they know that at some point in their history, they will have other, better competitors.
Une croissance transformationnelle. Une croissance transformationnelle, transformational growth. Appliquer ça dans le domaine du management, c'est évident. Aujourd'hui, vous pouvez poser la question à n'importe quel CEO aux États-Unis, qu'il soit le CEO de IBM, qu'il soit le CEO de General Electric. Si vous lui demandez, est-ce que la réussite de l'entreprise est dans la croissance des ventes? La réponse serait non. Pourquoi? Parce qu'il sait, à un moment donné, dans son histoire, il va avoir des meilleurs concurrents. Je vous donne l'exemple d'IBM. Anglais, I'm sorry. So, if I give the example of IBM, very, very interesting. IBM, you ask the question to the people, what does IBM today? We know that they are the first company to produce personal computers. It's not anymore in this business. Personal computers was sold to Lenovo, the Chinese group. That Chinese group, he makes $50 billion with IBM product. But IBM now, it's an IT solution company. They foresee that the next transformational growth for IBM is to be leading in a new era, in a new field. It's very important. It's a very lesson in management, it's very important. The paradigm shift that you are raising in terms of going from the economics of war to the economics of peace, okay? It's fundamental. If we don't do that, we're not going to succeed. That's for 100% sure. That's the reason I'm saying today, do we believe within Europe, nobody wishes to have a war. Nobody wants to see any escalation. But if we do have this paradigm of the economics of war, and now we're going to rebuild Ukraine, we're going to make billions, we have BlackRock making plans, and everybody else is getting a piece of the action. What do we gain here in terms of our society as human beings in this earth? As I said, I was not joking. I mean, Elon Musk keeps saying to us, we're going to live in Mars. I mean, selection of people who got money, and we're going to transform Mars into Earth. But let's stay in Earth and transform in Earth back to its nature. That will be better, Japan's way of looking at things. But I do agree with you. We have to go from the paradigm shift from the economics of war to the economics of peace.
So I was just saying that I totally agree on that point. But what I think is the business school in which I'm still today, we are in conflict now. For one reason, for the last 15 years, we are saying that we have to do this paradigm shift. And the problem is that today the general management of this business school is totally unable to accept that some professor of that school are saying this outside. And that's the same if we are speaking about the CEO of those big companies. They're okay on the paper. But when you touch their bonus, that's not the same story. What we have to think certainly, and this is not a question to answer right now, but we have to create territory of economic peace. We have to think very locally, very territorially about economic peace. How can we put people together working on an economy that will create links between us instead of creating war? And I will just conclude about this. We are all under the same paradigm. We want to achieve, we want to perform, We want to be the best. We want to be in front on the desk. That's the economic paradigm. Even if we are not in the economic world, that's the same. We want our children to do the best schools, etc., etc. And this is the way we have to invent new kind of university, new kind of project that will promote this. And I think that one of the solutions is to be able, from here in Europe and the Western country, to be able to learn from the outside, from elsewhere, learn from Africa, learn from South America, learn from Asia. We are still the people who are thinking that we know. We do not know. If we want peace, we do not know.
Thank you very much.